Our thanks to Mayor Emanuel and his staff for that very kind introduction. As the mayor said, we are delighted to welcome you to our 25th annual Women in the Forefront Luncheon. I am pleased to report that while this event is almost always a sellout, this is our most well-attended luncheon ever, with almost 1,700 of you here today. We are grateful for your enthusiastic support and, most importantly, for your shared interest in the advancement of women's leadership and inclusion in the city of Chicago. Each year, we make the case for inclusion with our signature initiative, the Chicago Network Census, an annual measurement of the advancement of women leaders in Chicago's 50 largest publicly reporting companies. Slide, please. As you can see, the news is not good. Women are not projected to reach corporate parity with men until the year 2084. Shocking. We hope that more of the Chicago 50 will lead by example so that Chicago becomes known as a national leader in advancing parity in the C-suite and on boards. With that, I would like to recognize some companies in the forefront that are here today. I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize our sponsors. I will ask that you hold your applause until I finish announcing this very generous group. First, our sincere thanks to our premier sponsor, Discover. And to our 2014 Platinum sponsors, Allstate, the Corporate Leadership Center, Kirkland & Ellis, the Northridge Group, and United Healthcare. Thank you. Next, if I could please ask representatives of our gold sponsors to stand. We thank you, and we thank all of our other sponsors. You can find a full listing in your program. Now please join me in expressing our deep appreciation to all our sponsors. One quick housekeeping item. We invite you to engage with our interactive Women in the Forefront Luncheon app. The app allows you to keep your pulse on all the activity of the room and connect with other attendees. This is also where you can submit Q&A questions for Arianna Huffington. But in person, you can get Arianna's new book signed after the luncheon. Books will be on sale and she will be signing in the Continental Foyer. Recognizing that I am now the only person standing between you and a delicious lunch, please enjoy and be ready for our program to continue with our 2014 keynote address from Chair, President, and Editor-in-Chief of the Huffington Post, Arianna Huffington. Thank you and bon appetit.
Hello, good afternoon. We have got a crowd here today. My name is Sue Bettman, and I'm the chair of the Chicago Network. I'm very proud and honored to be the chair this year. I think that video does say it all. How you define success is so personal. We're going to explore that more today with our speaker. At the Chicago Network, we consider it not only our mission, but our definition of success to bring forward that next generation of women leaders. Over the course of the year, to do that, we devoted a series of programs to women entrepreneurs at such venues as 1871 and other interesting places. In addition, just this morning, we hosted our first ever Rising to the Forefront Forum, which was a forum dedicated to nurturing that next generation of women leadership in Chicago. Then last year at this luncheon, some of you may recall, that our 2013 network chair, Therese Feuerbach of the Northridge Group, announced our plan for a job shadowing program. And it is my privilege and pleasure today to report that we have completed the pilot for this program. We call it our Future Leaders Program. And it included cohorts of students from the University of Illinois at Chicago and St. Xavier University, who spent 2 days over spring break with member companies exploring various different careers. Some of them are actually here today. Wave if you're, I don't know where they are. We want to thank our future leader hosts. As you can see their names here, Exelon, Ernst & Young, the Greater Chicago Food Depository, and the American Red Cross of Greater Chicago for their wonderful partnership in this program. Thank you. One fun note is we are thrilled that one of our former members, currently in Washington, is with us today. Tina Chen, who's assistant to the president and chief of staff to the First Lady, is in the audience. Tina, thank you for being here today. So thank you for being here and for being such a visible and positive example of women's leadership on the national scene. And of course, because you came from Chicago, it's even more important. So thank you. Thank you. Now, in just a few moments, we'll hear from Arianna Huffington with her thoughts about how we might consider redefining our own measures of success. But just a couple more things we have to do first. I want to thank those who made today possible. The co-chairs of this luncheon, Kapila Anand and Karen Case, as well as the entire Women in the Forefront Luncheon Committee. I mean, just look around. You did some fabulous work. Thank you very much. Yeah. And on behalf of the Chicago Network, I want to express our sincere appreciation to you, Arianna. Thank you for spending the morning with us and the afternoon with us. As an organization devoted to the advancement of women's leadership, we value and respect the strong and very constructive voice you have on the national scene. So thank you. You set the example for today's and tomorrow's leaders. We appreciate that. I'm wondering, however, Arianna, if you wore your track shoes this morning because we have kept you extraordinarily busy. Arianna has already been at CBS 2 taping an interview for their 11 a.m. newscast. Yay, CBS 2. I got some fans in the back. ABC 7. Do we hear any ABC 7 fans? Wonderful. Doing a segment for Windy City Live. And look for her interview with our Q&A moderator, Linda Yu. Thank you, on ABC 7 Chicago as well. Make sure this Wednesday evening you tune to WTTW Channel 11 Chicago tonight to see another interview with Arianna. So with that, I will invite Chicago Network member and premier sponsor of today's event, Diane Offerins of Discover Financial Services, to the podium. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue, and good afternoon, everyone. In business, we often say we're living in a period of disruption. Industries we've long viewed as sacrosanct have been upended and reinvented. Manufacturing, telecommunications, and publishing are 3 examples. The winners in this environment are visionaries, the ones who are nimble, open to change, and able to respond in real time. Arianna Huffington is one of those people. In May 2005, Arianna launched the Huffington Post, a news blog site that quickly became one of the most widely read and linked to and frequently cited media brands on the internet. In 2012, Arianna won a Pulitzer Prize for national reporting and has been named repeatedly as one of Forbes' most powerful women. Yet, with all of these accolades, Arianna had a wake-up call in 2007 that prompted her to rethink how she defines success. We'll let her tell you about that. But suffice it to say, her new book, Thrive, which I did download, the third metric to defining success and creating a life of well-being, wisdom, and wonder, goes well beyond the traditional metrics of money and power. Please join me in welcoming Chair, President, and Editor-in-Chief and visionary of the Huffington Post Media Group, Arianna Huffington.
Thank you so much. What an amazing view. What an incredible turnout for what an important cause. Thank you all so much for being here. And after the news we heard that it's going to take until some of us here are no longer around before we reach parity, clearly something else needs to be done. For those of you who have not heard me before, this accent is for real. I say that because I recently joked that I had actually been born in Fresno, California, and I cultivated this accent to give myself an air of being an ethnic minority, which is very popular everywhere except in Arizona. And I got 27 letters, believe it or not, or emails from people asking me, how exactly did you go about changing your accent? Which shows there's a certain gullibility in the American electorate you should worry about. In fact, my accent has been the bane of my existence. I don't know, each one of us, especially women here, will identify, have something we don't like about ourselves. I never liked my accent until I met Henry Kissinger. And he reassured me. He said to me, you know, don't worry about your accent. He said, in American public life, you can never overestimate the advantages of complete and total incomprehensibility. Of course, my ex-husband had another idea. He thought the reason I still have this heavy accent, even though I went to school in England and have lived in America longer than I've lived in Greece, is because he said, I never listen. But maybe that's what ex-husbands say, right? So, what the results we just heard about how long it will take for us to reach parity really reinforce the conclusion I reached in Thrive, which is that we need a third women's revolution. The first women's revolution gave us the vote. The second women's revolution gave us access to all jobs and the possibility to get to the top of every field. And as we know, and as we heard from the results today, this revolution is very much incomplete. But I don't believe we'll ever complete it without the third women's revolution. Because the third women's revolution is us women saying, basically, we don't want just to get to the top of the world. We want to change the world. Because the way the world is designed now is not working. It's not working for women. It's not working for men. It's not working for polar bears. It was designed by men, not the men present here. They're completely exempted from everything I'm going to say about men. But it was designed by men, and men have paid a heavy price in heart attacks, high blood pressure, burnout, but women are paying a heavier price than men have been paying. The statistics are stunning. The only statistic I quote twice in my book, because I think it is so important for us to really, really recognize that reality, is that women in stressful jobs, and that includes everybody in this room, have a 40% greater risk of heart disease and a 60% greater risk of diabetes. Because unfortunately, we're not as good as men are to just push the stress aside, go watch a game and forget about it. We internalize it, we have to wrestle it into the ground. And we also have this voice in our head that I call the obnoxious roommate living in our head, which is constantly judging whatever we do, however great it is not good enough. Because we have these perfectionist tendencies. And I know that voice was so intense in my life until I've learned to tame it, and now I think actually I have evicted the obnoxious roommate. She occasionally makes guest appearances, but as I told Stephen Colbert when I was on his show recently, I said, Stephen, my obnoxious roommate sounds exactly like you. But you all recognize that voice, and because of that voice, and because of our constant self-criticism, doubting, questioning, we are paying a heavy price when it comes to stress. At the same time, we look around and we see how many of us are burnt out. My personal wake-up call came 7 years ago in April, almost to the day, when I actually collapsed from burnout, exhaustion, and sleep deprivation. It was 2 years into building the Huffington Post. My oldest daughter was going with me through colleges to decide what college she wanted to apply to. You know that time. She had said to me, Mommy, you can't be on your BlackBerry when we were together, which seemed a very, very fair request. So at night, she would go to sleep in whatever hotel we would check in, and I would start working. What was interesting is that when I came to in a pool of blood with a broken cheekbone and 4 stitches on my right eye, I thought to myself, you know what, by conventional definitions of success, I'm successful. But by any sane definition of success, if you are lying in a pool of blood and nobody has shot you, you are not successful. Can we all agree on that? And you know what was really the most stunning thing as I look back is that I wasn't even aware that I was burnt out. And as I've been going around the country speaking about Thrive, I was in San Francisco recently doing an event with Sheryl Sandberg, and afterwards a woman said to us, you know, I don't remember the last time I was not tired. So if we do a kind of check, is it really true that we have accepted that being tired, that being burnt out, is the price we have to pay for success? Because a lot of people really believe that. And you know what? It is a collective delusion. It is a delusion completely undermined by modern science. That's why I have 55 pages of scientific endnotes in Thrive, because I wanted to convince the most stubborn skeptic that actually all the things that modern science recommends, sleep, meditation, breaks, movement, all these are performance enhancement tools. There is no trade-off between success, hard work, achievement, accomplishment, getting to the top, and taking care of ourselves. For some reason, we have come to believe there is a trade-off, and there isn't. And it's so important for those of us in the room who have succeeded to completely internalize that and convince the new generation coming up that it's not necessary. I was speaking at Northwestern last night, and it's really sad to see how college kids really believe that they have to choose between taking care of themselves and actually doing well at school, or then doing well in life. And the price we're paying with the millennial generation, which is known as the stress generation, is even more extreme. My own daughter, and I write about it in the book because I lived it myself, 2 years ago, she was about to graduate from Yale, and I got the call that every parent dreads. Mommy, I can't breathe. She had gotten involved in drugs. The trip from New York to New Haven to find her in the emergency room, I will never forget. And what I recognize, just to put you at ease, you know, she's been sober for 2 years and went back and graduated and is doing well. But what I learned is what an epidemic there is at the moment in colleges of addiction to legal and illegal drugs, an epidemic in depression, mental health problems, so many of them related to stress, unnecessary stress that we bring on ourselves. And many of us have had our entry point into redefining success through a painful wake-up call like mine, or much worse. The loss of a loved one, sickness. And my hope with Thrive is that we can have the wake-up call without the pain. That we can actually recognize the reality that the way our world has defined success in terms of two metrics only, money and power, is like trying to sit on a two-legged stool. Sooner or later, we topple over. Because there is a third metric of success that I have defined in terms of 4 dimensions of 4 pillars. The first is our well-being and health. Nothing is worth sacrificing that. And yet, if you look at our healthcare costs, 75% of our healthcare costs are because of preventable, chronic, stress-related diseases. We're never going to solve the healthcare crisis if we don't address this. And when we look at businesses, more and more businesses now are recognizing that taking care of the health of their employees is essential for a healthy bottom line. We had a conference in New York, a Thrive conference last Thursday and Friday that Mika Brzezinski and I co-hosted. And Mark Bertolini was one of the speakers. He's the CEO of Aetna. He had his own wake-up call when he broke his neck in a terrible skiing accident. He was hooked on narcotics for a year, and then he discovered meditation, yoga, and acupuncture, and it had such an impact on him that he made them available to his 49,000 Aetna employees. And then he did something better. He brought Duke University to study the impact, and they found a 7% reduction in healthcare costs and a 69-minute-a-day improvement in productivity. We pay our employees for their judgment, not their stamina. You can have somebody there from 8 in the morning until 10 at night, and if they're burned out, the best they can be doing is updating their Facebook profiles. And also, for those of us who are leaders of organizations, of groups, if you look back at your own life, certainly when I look back at mine, as Bill Clinton actually said in the book, when he looks back at his life, he says, the most important mistakes I made when I was tired. He did not specify what mistakes, but we would all say the same. You know, when I'm tired and burned out, that's when I overreact. That's when I take things personally. That's when I hire the wrong people. And that's when basically I don't see the opportunities ahead of me and I don't see the icebergs before they hit the Titanic. So it is really an incredible moment we're living through, this global shift that is happening, that makes us realize that we don't have to sacrifice our well-being and health on the altar of success. The second pillar to this third metric of success is wisdom. You know, we look around and we see an enormous amount of leaders, very smart leaders with high IQs and great degrees making terrible mistakes. It's not because they're not smart, but they are not wise. And we all have in us a place of wisdom, strength, and joy. We've all been there. Most of the time we are not there. But if we can get to go there again and again and again and tap into this wisdom, our life is truly transformed from struggle to grace. It doesn't mean bad things won't happen, there won't be obstacles and challenges, but we deal with them from such a different place. And that's why I even quote in the book people in concentration camps to show that this is not just a recipe for people at the top. For wherever people are, whether you are struggling to put food on the table or juggling 2 jobs and a child, the more connected we are with our own strength and wisdom, the more resilient we are and the more able we are to overcome life's challenges. But here, a modern problem that we are all facing is our addiction to technology. We are addicted. We have to admit it. And we need to acknowledge it and take steps. First of all, we need to start by taking as good care of ourselves as we take of our smartphones. You know, if you have an iPhone like I have, you start getting alerts. 20% of battery remaining, 17% of battery remaining. You begin to get worried and look around for a recharging shrine, lest anything happens to your smartphone. What about ourselves? Clearly, when I collapsed, I was below 0% battery remaining, and I didn't even know it. So increasing our awareness is key. And that's why, because my hope is that we can move from knowledge to action. That's why I end each of these sections on each of these pillars with 3 little baby steps. And the baby step, the first baby step at the end of the wisdom section is really super simple, and I highly recommend it. And I'm really going to read it to you very quickly. Basically, at the end of your day, have a specific time when you regularly turn off your devices, and gently escort them out of your bedroom. Melody, I'm talking to you. I have a few girlfriends here, Melody Hobson being one of them. I'm the sleep sponsor, encouraging her to get more sleep. And disconnecting from technology and not having your phone by your bed is the key to that. Because if you wake up in the middle of the night, you are going to be tempted to look at your data, right? And then the science here is amazing. Your day life will intrude into your night life, and your sleep when you go back is not going to be as recharging. So, and when you wake up, that's the other part, in the morning, don't start your day by immediately looking at your smartphone. Take 1 minute. Trust me, you do have 1 minute to breathe deeply, be grateful, or set your intention for the day. Basically, it means you are in control of your day. The minute we go to our smartphone, we allow the outside world to determine where our attention goes. And you know, when you're at your most creative is when you set the agenda. And I have a lot of examples in the book, whether it's Bill Gates, who famously took think weeks and went in a cabin without technology, or Steve Jobs, who said that his best ideas came after Zen meditation, or 2013, incidentally, was the tipping point when CEO after CEO came out, not as being gay, but as being meditators. It was really fascinating. Like Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, one of the biggest hedge funds in the world, said for the first time in 2013, he said, I've been meditating for 35 years. I consider it the foundation of my success. Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, he said, I've been meditating for 25 years. I asked Mark, actually, in San Francisco, I said, Mark, what happened? Why didn't you tell us that in 2012? He said, you know what? He said, up until now, meditation, sleep, all these things were seen as kind of vaguely flaky, California, new agey, not the kind of thing a hard-hitting CEO wanted to be associated with. But now all that has changed. There is practically no major university that does not have a sleep division in their medical school. In fact, I have become such a sleep evangelist, urging women to sleep their way to the top. That I was invited to join the Harvard School of Medicine Sleep Division. So now I'm completely au courant with the latest data and information on the value of sleep. So my point is that the global shift is happening. 35% of American companies at the moment have introduced some form of stress reduction practices into their workplace. And that includes not just Aetna that I already mentioned, but Nike and Procter & Gamble and General Mills. So it is happening. But right now, these two realities are coexisting. So you have the new paradigm which includes also investment companies. We did an event in Davos with the Boston Consulting Group, for example, and they were saying that they have started a red zone alert system where they track consultants who are billing too many hours because they feel they are a candidate for burnout. And even Goldman Sachs, after a few people jumped from high floors to their death, not at Goldman Sachs, generally in the industry, issued a memo to their analysts saying, take weekends off, which was a very radical idea. But the point is that the global shift is happening. But the old world, the old paradigm, is still coexisting with a new paradigm. And you all know that reality. You all know companies where basically the language is all that macho language of we're killing it, we're crushing it, where CEOs are passing around the art of war, a Chinese military treatise. I think we should start giving CEOs the giving tree. Or Make Room for Ducklings. It's a fabulous kindergarten book. And begin to change the language. Anybody says in front of me, John is amazing, he's working 24/7. I said, we have a problem if he's working 24/7. It's like congratulating somebody for coming to work drunk. So, the third pillar is wonder. We look around and there's so much to really enjoy in life. There are so many little things that we miss when we are perpetually preoccupied, buried either in our thoughts or in our smartphones. And our minds have a tendency to either be in the past judging us or in the future worrying. I quote Montaigne in the book, who said, there were many terrible things in my life, but most of them never happened. So if we can learn to be in the present, and that's really where meditation helps us. And incidentally, one of my 12 steps, I have a total of 12 steps we can take. One of them is a 5-minute meditation. That's all. That's how we begin to recognize there is another place in us. And that's when we begin to recognize that our thoughts are not always truthful, and they're not always the reality. And we can begin to reconnect with our own essence and to stop living as breathlessly as we're living right now in what has been termed time famine, perpetually running out of time. I was recently at a friend's memorial, and I realized that, our eulogies have nothing to do with our LinkedIn profiles. Have you ever been to a memorial and heard anybody say, George was amazing. He increased market share by 1/3. The truth is that our eulogies are about all the other things. How we made people feel, what made us laugh, small kindnesses, lifelong passions. So why not include all that in our lives? And when we allow room for wonder and for joy, we are also much more effective. That is really the supreme irony, that all these things that I mentioned make us better at our jobs, at the same time that they make us realize that we are not defined by our jobs, however magnificent they may be. And that's why we had a great moment at the conference on Friday. We had invited Lucy Danziger to be on one of the panels. She was the editor-in-chief of Self. During the time between her accepting the invitation and the conference, she was fired from her job. And people asked me, so is she still going to be on the panel? I said, absolutely. Who she is not defined by her job. And we talked about it. I asked her, are you comfortable talking about it? I said, women need to be comfortable to talk about that. All of us have been rejected somewhere, whether it's a job, a man, something, right? The man I wanted to marry in London didn't want to marry me. I decided to leave London and move to New York. Everything that happened to me basically happened because a man wouldn't marry me. So very often we see that our rejections, our firings, whatever it is, may be the best stepping stone to the next chapter in our lives. And Lucy was amazing about that, talking about that, and giving permission to all of us to realize that we are not our jobs. And when we recognize that, that's when we make the best decisions. I was doing Ellen's show recently, and we talked about the fact that if she had defined herself by her first successful sitcom, she would never have come out because she would have worried of losing that success, which she did. Her sitcom was canceled, and the phone, as she said, did not ring for 3 years. But she was true to herself, and now she's thriving. If we define ourselves purely in terms of our jobs and our to-do lists, we are shrinking. And we are losing sense of all those possibilities. And the book is full of my favorite quotes, and my absolute favorite quote is from Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor of Rome and a Stoic philosopher. So he had a pretty big job, right? But every night he would go to bed and write in a book that became Meditations. And it's really all about how life includes like a hidden blessing in everything that happens. Let me just read you a couple of lines. True understanding is to see the events of life in this way. You are here for my benefit, though rumor paints you otherwise. And everything is turned to one's advantage. Truly, whatever arises in life is the right material to bring about your growth and the growth of those around you. Everything contains some special purpose and a hidden blessing. If we can remember that, it is really extraordinary. Because so often when we look back at our life, we recognize that, but not at the time when bad things are happening. Including, I mentioned my daughter's Christina's crisis. Even now, when I look back at that, I see how grateful I am that this wake-up call happened when I was still there to help, when she could actually deal with the underlying problems, and when she can actually lead the rest of her life, I hope, with a recognition of what were her own trigger points that she needs to be aware of. And we can say that about just about everything in our lives. It's really something that Rumi says, that's one of my other favorite quotes: live life as though everything is rigged in your favor. Because so often we live life focusing on the negative things happening and making us feel that somehow life is not fair, this shouldn't have happened, and we can turn this around. So let me wrap everything up before we move to our questions with Linda by saying that if we're lucky, we have 30,000 days to play the game of life. And how we play it depends on what we value. If we only value money and power, we will never have enough. If we also include the third metric of our well-being, wisdom, wonder, and giving, giving is key here. And there's an entire section about the science of giving. More and more science is now seeing giving as a shortcut to happiness. And when we integrate all that in our lives, then life is lived with a greater sense of purpose, meaning, and joy. And Archimedes, my favorite Greek compatriot from the old time, said, "Give me a place to stand and I can move the world." And if we find that place in us, and from that place reach out to others, as well as take care of ourselves. You know, on planes they tell you, put your own oxygen mask first. And we women are so bad at putting our own oxygen mask first. But if we learn to do that, while at the same time tap into our own wisdom, reach out to others, and connect with the wonder of the world, then life is transformed from struggle to grace, no matter what the obstacles and the challenges. And we do realize that life is shaped from the inside out. And that's why I'd like to end with 3 words: onward, upward, and inward. Thank you.
Wasn't she fabulous? And do you know why she's particularly fabulous today? Because she got 8 hours of sleep last night. And tell everybody, too, we talked about it this morning, you know, with part of making that change is the choices you make of what you're going to do in the evening when you know you have to get up early. Talk about, real quick, about that.
I think really what happened to me, you know, in the language of habits, in the literature of habits, they talk about changing one keystone habit first, and then other habits become easier to change. So what I changed after my collapse was sleep. I went from 4 to 5 hours to 7 to 8 hours. And it was absolutely transformational. I basically loved the way I felt on the days when I had a good night's sleep, and I began to really dislike the way I felt on the days I didn't. And so I made it a priority. It's like I look at when do I have to get up the next morning, and I make sure that I can get enough sleep the night before, which means I may not go out to dinner with friends. And I realize that some of you may have young children, and they may be up all night, and you're not completely in control of what happens at night. Well, that's when naps are so important. And Linda and I were talking about how as she's healing and her body's healing from the accident, naps are even more important. And she had like 6 yesterday, which I love.
Over the weekend.
Especially because she knew she was going to see me. So.
Yeah, right.
But also at the Huffington Post, for example, we have now 2 nap rooms. And at first, when I put them in, people were like looking at me like, who is ever going to be seen walking into a nap room? Well, now they're perpetually full. Although I must say, the other day I was going by one of them and I saw 2 people coming out of one of them. But I thought to myself, whatever it takes to recharge you.
That's right.
Just don't tell HR, right?
How many here got 8 hours of sleep regularly? We have a couple.
Yeah.
So the rest of you, that's the first step, all right?
Well, but actually the first step is to say 30 minutes more. You know, you're not
Right.
going to go from whatever you're getting now to 8, and you may not need 8. You know, you may need 7 or 6. Everybody needs a different amount of sleep. But
Right.
whatever you know how much sleep you need? You wake up without an alarm. It's very simple.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to some questions here now. Because of the network's leadership initiative, we want to ask you some questions that will help those who are learning to be the future leaders, okay? So which skill has been the most important to you throughout your career?
You know, it's so interesting, but when I look back, I think that the most important skill has to do with recognizing someone else's need that you're working with. You know, there is that recognition now that when you are giving, when you are connecting with people in terms of where they are, that's really one of the fastest ways to also progress in your own work. Adam Grant, the professor at Wharton, wrote this great book called Give and Take. And they have actually found even like salespeople who really care about their clients sell more. So you can apply that to anything you're doing. If you see people simply as transactional relationships, then you don't build these deep relationships that in the end are the most important thing in your career.
And that goes back to mindfulness in your book,
Yes.
too. That goes back to that, too. The Chicago Network, though it was built to encourage and to help women who are moving up, I think I've also heard there's also a push to say, well, it's not just women, we'll include men too, and we're happy to see more men here today too. So we want to have this question, this answer, all right, apply to men and women. Considering how our world is changing and the technology that is changing our world, what skill might be the most important for our next generation of leaders, men and women?
I would say it has to do with whatever we can tap into that makes us most creative. Because in what is now known as the second machine age, more and more functions of jobs are going to be taken over by algorithms or some form of technology. So the most valuable employees and leaders are going to be the ones who are the most creative, the ones who can come up with the best ideas. And in a way, it's clear that we're going to be our most creative when we are actually the most recharged.
That's right.
So these things are connected. And that's why we see so many people who are recognizing the importance of that.
So it's not necessarily that you have to be the person who is the most up on the new technology and how to use it, but you're the person who maybe understands it but still leaves room to be open to ideas.
Exactly, and come up with good ideas and see where the opportunities are going. And I mean, I know for myself that when I started, I think, being a better leader after my collapse, I was very clear about where we needed to go. I knew we had to become a global media company, and in the last 3 years, we've launched HuffPost in 11 countries. Yeah. You know, you have that clarity, and you follow that vision no matter what the obstacles.
We talked earlier, you and I, about this, that in the beginning, you know, did you ever have any idea that Huffington Post would become what it is? And you said, you know, you have that focus, but there are naysayers. And some of those naysayers may be people that you believe in, that you respect. What do? How do you say, I know I'm taking the right path, when somebody you respect says, no, I don't think you should do that?
That hasn't happened. No, I mean, it may happen, but I had a lot of people say that when we launched the Huffington Post. I remember one review that said the Huffington Post is an unsurvivable failure. It is the movie equivalent of Gigli, Ishtar, and Heaven's Gate all rolled into one. Oh. And that was on day one. So absolutely, the naysaying has happened. It will always happen in anything we try to do. I think what is important is to see what is valid criticism and learn from it, and then move on. I think pain comes when we cling to the criticism and we internalize it.
Sure. Off of that, you know, you've had many steps in your career, you've seen it go to success, but somewhere along the way there may have been obstacles, though you have said, I try to do this and I do this, and now I sleep more, and now I feel I have more wisdom, and I give. What has been the thing that has stood in the way of that the most? What is the thing that we have to look to that says, this might get in our way?
I really think two things. One is what I mentioned about the collective delusion that we have to burn out to succeed, because it's very deep. I just want to warn you that it's very deep. The world will keep sending us signals that we need to be doing more and more and more because we think that's the way to succeed. And we need to address that by looking at the science, by listening to other people's stories, and see what is it that really brings that truth home to us. But the other thing is absolutely key. And the other thing I also mentioned is the obnoxious roommate. Our own voice that filibusters our dreams and judges us and puts us down. And these two things for me are the most draining and potentially dangerous in terms of what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve it.
You know, if everybody understood when you say that's the obnoxious roommate, because to me, that allows you to say, you can get rid of that roommate, as opposed to say, oh, that's just my insecurities.
Yes, exactly. Right? You're absolutely right. You totally can get rid of it. Or when that roommate speaks, at some point you can smile at it. Like, you know, you don't have to take it seriously. That's the thing. It's like we are not those thoughts.
And don't feed it.
Don't feed it.
Don't
yeah,
feed it,
that's
right.
the key. Don't feed it. And also, There's a great quote by Ian Thomas, who said, every day the world will yank you by the hand and say, this is important, and this is important, and this is important. You must worry about this, and you must worry about that, and you must worry about the other. And you must yank your hand back and put it on your heart and say, no, this is important. It's really important to realize that this is our human capital. And if we don't nurture that, it's like we are giving up our most important resource. You know, it's so funny. I was just pre-taping Super Soul Sunday with Oprah, which airs on Mother's Day. And she said to me how when she was starting in her career, when she was launching her show, she said there were days when she would come home and she was too exhausted to take her clothes off, so she would sleep in her clothes. But we kind of agreed that she would still have been Oprah if she had taken an hour to have a shower, a change, and go to bed. Can we all agree on that?
Yes.
Because it wasn't the overwork that got her to be where she is. And it wasn't the overwork that got me to be where I am. And I can guarantee it wasn't the overwork. Overwork is different from hard work. It wasn't the overwork. It wasn't the time when you were exhausted, but you kept pushing yourself to clear your email list or to do one more project before you went to sleep. It wasn't that that got you to be successful. And if you believe it is, please talk to yourself and convince yourself it wasn't.
Good. And get rid of that roommate, too.
Get rid of
And
that roommate.
get your sleep, too. All right. I wish we had more time. She's wonderful, right? Yes.
I want to say one more thing, because this is such a wonderful room of people who could really launch the third women's revolution. So I want to invite you to continue this conversation on the Huffington Post. So any thoughts you have from your experience about all the things we discussed today or anything else that we haven't discussed, please do a post. And I'm going to make it super easy for you to bypass the Huffington Post bureaucracy. I'm going to give you my email address. Arianna, with one R and two N's, at huffingtonpost.com. The one good thing about founding a company is that you get a good email address. And I'm going to have cards also at the book signing, so I'll give you cards, because I think that if we can elevate the conversation so people can actually hear from each other and then take part in this campaign we launched with the hashtag #HowIThrive, which is like sharing recipes with each other. Because then we can all learn, both from our mistakes and from the lessons that we are now incorporating in our lives. Thank you so much.
Arianna, thank you so very much. Linda, thank you also for Q&A. I'm just absolutely inspired. We heard so many wonderful things to take home with us and incorporate into our lives. I think the one that really resonated for me was recognizing what other people need. So thank you. As of those of you who have attended before know, if your birthday is closest to today's date at your table, you may take home the flowers. Thanks again for joining us at Wiffle.